Hi, everyone. This is Courtney Spitzer, the project coordinator for our Early Psychosis Learning Collaborative. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. Now, I just want to review a few housekeeping items before we begin. Next slide, please. Participant microphones have been muted at entry, and you'll be able to unmute them during the discussion portion. During the presentation, if you have any technical difficulties or questions about the topic, please use the chat box. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing at a later time on the MHTTC website. To reach us after the webinar, you can email newengland@mhttcnetwork.org. Next slide, please. This slide provides a description of our disclaimers for MHTTC. Next slide, please. The MHTTC network uses affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in all activities. That language is strengths-based and hopeful, inclusive and accepting of our diverse cultures, genders, perspectives, and experiences, healing-centered, trauma-responsive, inviting to individuals participating in their own journeys, person-first and free of labels, non-judgmental and avoiding assumptions, respectful, clear, and understandable, consistent with our actions, policies, and products. With that, it's my pleasure to hand it over to Dr. Michelle Friedman-Yakubian for introductions.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for the fourth part of our 7-part monthly series called Basics of Coordinated Specialty Care for Early Psychosis. This has been a really fun series to help to produce, and really appreciating all of you for spending time with us today. I'm Michelle Friedman-Yakubian. I'm a clinical psychologist in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm part of the New England MHTTC and the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. I'm also a part of the Early Psychosis Working Group of the MHTTC as well. And it's a beautiful day here in our area. And so it feels like a really nice day to be introducing some really fabulous speakers that we have today. So first, I just want to tell you a little bit about the MHTTC series. This is a series that we've developed that's designed to help orient new people that are working in coordinated specialty care. This could include students, clinicians, prescribers, supported employment specialists, family clinicians, peer specialists, and partners of different kinds. Each of the 7 webinars in this series is focused on a different topic and is co-presented by individuals with different areas of expertise, some coming from professional expertise in that component of care, as well as individuals with expertise that come from lived experience, who will speak to how that aspect of care has been meaningful and to share their important thoughts about each of the topics. We're planning to use the content from each of these webinars to develop an open source and freely available online course that we hope will be helpful for orienting new staff members and trainees that are beginning to work in coordinated specialty programs for individuals experiencing early psychosis. So it's going to be available on a platform called Healthy Knowledge, which is a site that you can check out. There's lots of great free resources that are available on the Healthy Knowledge website. And keep in mind, we will be recording the session today, and we do hope that you will choose to take part actively. One thing that you'll be glad to know is the recording will not see you unless you talk without your microphone on. So it's okay to keep your camera on if you want to just be social and be able to see the presenters and let them see you. You won't get in the recording unless you talk. Here's a list of some of the sessions that we've had so far, as well as some of the sessions that are coming up. And I'm super excited to introduce our speakers today. We have 2 fantastic presenters. Danny Sosa is a certified peer specialist at On Track New York, and Northwell Health's coordinated specialty care programs for first episode psychosis, as well as Strong 365's online care navigation platform operating across New York State. As a former participant, he draws on his personal journey of recovery to support young people. Danny routinely strives to combat fears and stigmas, encourage meaningful connections, and build community through one-on-one conversations and group activities. Danny holds a peer specialist certification from the New York State Office of Mental Health, and he offers assistance to participants and their families in English and Spanish. Chantel Garrett is the founding director of Strong 365, a nonprofit mental health support community and resource hub for young people with a focus on early psychosis. As supporter and advocate for her brother who lives with schizophrenia, Chantel's work merges a personal passion with her professional background in corporate marketing to drive radical change in the way we perceive mental health and how we access quality care. She is a graduate fellow of the University of Washington School of Public Health and co-investigator of an ongoing study with collaborators at Northwell Health, including Danny, that is testing the potential for digital media strategies to identify and engage youth in help-seeking behaviors online. So it is my absolute pleasure to turn things over to Danny and Chantel. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. It's so great to be here. Thank you for doing this. And I'm going to hand over to Danny to kick us off.
Hi everyone. So today we have some learning objectives to learn about what is early psychosis. We're going to go through 4 steps. The first one will be to understand what psychosis is and how it is commonly experienced from first person and family member perspectives. The second step will be to identify early signs and how we do that and what does that entail. The third step, distinguish between clinical high risk and first episode psychosis. And finally, I think the last step and the more meaty step will be understand the basics of screening and helpful ways to engage young people as they're interacting with a CSC team for the first time. And I think next slide for Chantel.
Thanks, Danny. So let's dive in. What is psychosis? So psychosis is a term that encompasses a broad range of symptoms. It's not a diagnosis on its own. It's typically marked by changes in a person's thoughts, perceptions, or beliefs, as well as experiences such as hallucinations or delusions and social withdrawal. And sometimes it can be the signal of a start of a mental health condition, such as schizophrenia, a spectrum disorder, which is the context in which we'll be exploring psychosis today. Next. Psychosis is more common than many people think. It's estimated to affect about 100,000 young people for the first time in the US each year, according to the National Institutes of Mental Health. And over a lifetime, about 3 in every 100 people will experience psychosis. And yet these experiences are typically shrouded in some amount of fear, stigma, shame. So we're going to talk about some of those aspects today. We wanted to point out right up front that it can be helpful to remind people that they're not alone, as this can be, from both a personal and a family member perspective, a very alienating experience in which you are sure that you must be the only person or the only family member who has ever gone through it. And so this thinking, of course, causes barriers to care. And we think it's really important to get these normalizing statistics out in the world, along with the stories and faces like ours that can help others feel less alone and more empowered to take action for their well-being. Next.
So what causes psychosis? So there are many things, but this is a kind of discussion of that we're still learning about why psychosis develops. It is thought to be a result of a mix of factors, including genetics and environmental factors during adolescence, critical stage of brain development. There are some examples of environmental factors, but not only these, psychological or physical trauma, physical illness, and substance abuse. There are also some medical factors such as drug interactions, neurological disorders, and nutritional deficiencies that can also cause psychosis and are important to rule out early on. So mental health is health. I think this is one of the most important kind of parts to discuss. Psychosis can happen to anyone through no fault of their own. It could be from one day to another. Like most mental health challenges, the sooner someone gets a treatment, the smoother the path to recovery. The support of friends, as Chantal was speaking earlier, family and people with similar experiences is immensely helpful. Also feeling that you're not alone through these kind of experiences. There are common threads, but everyone's experience and the mix of things that helps each person is unique. And psychosis is episodic, although some people may only experience it once. Regaining quality of life and self-determination is the expectation. And to further point out, I think the language that we also use can be different based on how people are going through the experience. Some people might feel afraid of what they're going through. Some people might feel that there's a change in their value systems, and some people might gain something from the experience. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Danny. Yeah, and I'll just point out too, from that last slide, I think one of the kind of amazing and very significant shifts that came with the introduction of coordinated specialty care programs is this expectation of recovery or expectation of transformation, an expectation that someone can get back to living the life they want to live. And I'll just share that when my brother first developed psychosis and then schizophrenia 20 years ago, we were told, you know, there's no hope for his future. There's nowhere for him to live. There's no way he can go to school. And in fact, you know, there weren't many treatments sort of available other than, you know, heavy medications that he happened to not like. And so it just seemed to be this vicious cycle, and there were not a lot of answers and very little hope. So I think this shift in focus around functional recovery, working toward individual goals, is one of the most exciting developments in this space over the past couple of decades, and ultimately what kind of brought me into this space. So I just wanted to offer that we really want to focus on continuing to communicate this focus around functional recovery to individuals and families. And yeah, so Danny, thank you for that. So let's touch a little bit on the psychosis spectrum. Most CSC programs today focus on first episode psychosis, and some also serve individuals who are clinically high risk for psychosis, but who have yet to develop a first episode. So on the far left, we have mild manifestations of psychosis-like experiences. These are things that almost all of us can relate to, such as unusual thoughts or perceptions that are fleeting and slight, but they're still recognized as unreal and unfamiliar. These can be caused by stress, and there's no action recommended. In the middle column there, in clinical high-risk psychosis, these thoughts or perceptions become recurrent. They are experienced as possibly real, but there's still some uncertainty. And these experiences can cause cognitive impact and present challenges at school or work or relationships. And it does require some amount of support and monitoring. And finally, on the far left, in first episode psychosis, unusual thoughts or perceptions become persistent. And my dog is going to join us. They are experienced as definitively real, with no doubt and often with increased intensity. These experiences often cause cognitive impact and disrupt some daily activities, including school, work, relationships, and of course, first episode psychosis requires substantial support and intervention, which is why all of you are here. Yes, so we wanted to just kind of describe or lay the groundwork for this spectrum. Next slide. And this is a quote from a young person who our team at Strong 365 worked with on a community outreach project for On Track New York. They said, "I wish I had known the warning signs earlier, just so I could have prevented it from getting so bad. It just would have been nice to know." And so with that, Danny's going to walk us through the signs to look for.
So I'll go over these. There are going to be 3 more slides about unfamiliar thoughts or feelings, sensory perceptual change or perceptual changes, and changes in a typical routine. As a caveat, from my experience, while I was going through my lived experience, I didn't really have the words to describe these thoughts until about 4 or 5 months after I started seeing therapists. So the words that people use and the experiences that they have can change based on where they are in their journey. So next slide, please. So unfamiliar thoughts or feelings, believing that ordinary things in the environment have special meaning, having difficulty organizing thoughts or finding the right words, having ideas that seem strange, grandiose, or illogical, believing that others can read their mind or know that what they are thinking. Next slide, please. Sensory or perceptual changes, seeming confused about which events are real and which are imaginary, thinking that other people are watching them or talking about them, hearing or seeing things that do not, I guess, exist, such as voices, shadows, or images, thinking that they're not in control of their own thoughts, ideas, or actions. Next slide, please. Changes in typical routine, withdrawing from and avoiding social activities and friends or family, having difficulty concentrating, listening, or reading, losing interest in, last but not least, losing interest in previously held activities or hobbies. I believe next slide. And here are some tools that clinicians use, the medical field. You can go back to one. I believe Chantal will pick this one up. So the previous slides were about how it feels as a person going into a meeting with a clinician the first time and what they can be going through. Some of them might be what they're experiencing at that moment. Some of it might be what they feel they could experience. And like, as I said before, is also based on what part of their journey they're from, their environment, their social circle, and kind of how they're responding to this new kind of experience that might be the first of their social circle and their family. So I believe Chantal will take up this slide.
Thanks, Danny. Just a quick overview of screening tools for psychosis, since we're talking about the signs. And these tools are really meant to help elicit initial disclosure of experiences. These include the Psychosis Questionnaire Brief, the PQB, the Prime Screen, the Prodromal Questionnaire 16 item, and the Youth Psychosis at Risk Questionnaire. All of these can be found at psychosisscreening.org. You can see the / there asking about psychosis, but it's just a great resource. That site in general has so much in-depth information about screening. It is particular to primary care settings. That's why it was created for primary care physicians to be able to elicit these experiences and then hopefully refer individuals along. But I found it to be just a very helpful resource in general. After one of these self-screeners, the idea is to have a trained clinician deliver an assessment, which is typically the SIPS, the Structured Interview for Psychosis Risk Syndromes. Next slide. And then generally, in terms of assessing for psychosis, some very common questions that cut across most of these screeners are as follows. Recently, have you been feeling confused at times about what is real or imaginary, that there are odd or unusual things going on, like you can hear or see things that other people do not, or that you're not in control of your own mind. And then it really important to try to draw out, of course, how much these experiences are disrupting their daily life. And that goes back to that spectrum idea, sort of how much is it getting in the way? And when did these experiences begin? Which is important in first episode psychosis, also to document the start of these experiences, to understand how long it took someone to come into care. And this duration of untreated psychosis, of course, can be a key factor in their recovery journey, which longer at times that it can take people, or longer durations are often associated with more difficult kind of roads through recovery, whereas shorter is typically has a relationship, at least, with better outcomes over time. Next slide. And Danny, I think this is for you.
Yeah, so it is a complex human experience. I myself, while I went through it, as a peer in my job, there's this sense of a common thread where, even though we don't share one-to-one experience, the way I conceptualize what the event they occurred and what I went through and the feelings that were brought up, I can tell that thread is common with other people that I speak with that have also gone through their lived experience. So as supporters, I really do think that we can meet a person where they are, with what they think that is going on. And I definitely think it's important to not only use their language, but to almost entice them to speak kind of like what's going on in the mind. Because as a person that has gone through it, even finding the right words and to label like the feelings of like either anger, sadness, depression, all these kind of labels and words that a person can use, it means something. And it also it allows, if you keep an open mind, it allows for the conversation that I believe to be rich, and also to be as supportive as can be. And there's many kind of terminology that kind of fits there, whether it's an emotional experience, a spiritual experience, whether it's concentration, trying to fill out your goals, becoming independent, and to become your own person. And as the third bullet point in this says, I think it's important to hold space for unknowns or uncertainties. There are sometimes when a person is going through the experience, they don't know what's next. They don't know how they're going to feel tomorrow. They don't know if coming to meet with a person once a week is going to be helpful, or if it's going to be detrimental to their health. And I think that kind of topics is important to be kind of discussed and broached. And then the last point is to understand that language or ideas that are empowering to one person may not be to another. I myself, I'm a lover of words, of stories, of sharing, but I'm also a private person. And I think there are other people with different kind of ideas and emotions. There are some people that are more outgoing. There are some people that, want to go with their friends to a party. They want to travel. They want to become a better version of themselves. They just want to like be able to be happy. And I think all these stories are not only passionate, but they're right for each individual person. And the main goal, and I think I want to highlight this point, is that the person that is going through the experience should be in control of what they find helpful and they find useful, and what they find will contribute to their health as a person. Next slide. And one of the things that I think is also hard to speak about is that finding connections is important, and building trust with communities. And it can be helpful to shift from our mindset or the usual mindset of what is pathological or broken, to a mindset of hope, promise, human potential, working towards someone's goals together, what they find important, what's a priority for them, what behaviors are once adaptive and now may no longer serve, and identify which tools and resources are helpful in each individual's wellness toolbox. And that could be many things, from, walking your pet, to having a pet, to, taking care of, your car, to having a dream, to live in your dream house, to finding a partner, to sharing like deep secrets that you would never share with anybody, and being accepted into a community, so you no longer feel alone. So these can be many various things, and I think each person kind of has their own goals and also limits. So I think it's best to approach a person as early as possible, and to be as open as possible to support them at any step of the journey, whether it's, this is the 5th time that somebody has speaking to you, and finally they're able to announce that something may be wrong, or that, they might need help in order to like communicate better, or they just, they just want to talk about the baseball game that happened last night. I think all of these kinds of conversations are important and are helpful to a person going through a lived experience. Next slide.
So we'll talk here a little bit about tips for introducing your team and services to individuals. So this was us sort of imagining maybe those first interactions while you're building trust and building connection with individuals. So the first thing is maybe not to focus on symptoms or psychosis. When psychosis symptoms begin, the person affected may be unaware, and usually trying to convince someone of something doesn't work. And instead, it's really about finding common ground, maybe a common goal. So next. And Danny, I can't remember. Oh, this is me, a common goal. Here we are. There's a common goal. Find a goal that you and the young person agree on. For example, maybe you can agree on feeling the desire to feel better, to hang out with friends again, or improve grades, letting them know that your team can help them get there. And then Danny, I think this one's for you.
So yeah, I think this is one of the most, another essential fundamental point is that inquire curiously and try again. It's possible that it'll take multiple tries or a few tries to motivate a young person to take action. And sometimes they may never want to take an action while you see them. And in these discussions, I think it's important to generally ask why they're hesitant, nervous, or scared, or maybe why they don't want to talk about the subject. And if they don't want to talk about the subject, I think it's okay to move on. But I think to be always open to want to continue the conversation is good. And then as time moves on, the familiarity between a person will build a relationship to open the conversation again if they want to. And if they don't want to, that's okay. But I think to try honestly and to approach each individual as a person, and less of do A plus B plus C will get you the goals that you want in life. It's more of let's connect as an individual, and sometimes that means, maybe let's try to look for a job. But if they don't want to look for a job, that's okay. Maybe it's, let's do a resume and let's not send it out. Let's see how this works, and try more things. And then it might be just let's go to the library and get some books and see if these like help you connect the goals in life that one might have for each other, and connect them with like, what do I do today that will get me to that step. So I think those are good conversations and a good attitude to have. Next slide.
And then I was actually thinking before covering, this is our final slide, but we have a couple minutes, and I saw a question in the chat about a slide a few back around the complex human experience that Danny was covering. I wonder if we can just skip back a little bit and look at a Venn diagram. There we go. So maybe Danny, you and I can both add just a little bit of context here, but around the sample conceptualizations of psychosis that we have, and by all means, this is not exhaustive. We took these ideas from On Track New York's peer support manual. And so these are some of the conceptualizations that are covered in the manual as sort of common ones that come up in ways, as ways in which individuals might seek to make sense of or describe their experiences. And we sought here also to kind kind of display some of the connection points between some of these ideas. For example, up in the top, making friends with parts of yourself that might feel unknown or scary um, has a relationship certainly with this idea of transformation versus recovery. And meaning what is meant by that, I think, around transformation versus recovery is, maybe moving through a journey through psychosis and coming to a new understanding and a new kind of maybe identity and a new goals for yourself, new things that you've even discovered about yourself. Um, in fact, I think anyone who has spent time in therapy can probably attest to this idea of transformation, of maybe finding things that you really didn't even expect that might have changed your conceptualization of self and really what you want out of the world and how you see yourself in it. So related to those two ideas, making friends and transformation, is psychosis as a teacher, right? You might draw on those ideas to understand psychosis as, well, gosh, maybe it was really sort of scary and there were a lot of unknowns along the way, but somehow I have found this transformation, and psychosis, the experience of psychosis, has taught me some things and I'm bringing them along with me. And so that's an example. And I think there was a question in the chat about dangerous gifts and what is that? And I think this is an idea, Danny, I'm going to welcome you to talk more about this, but the basic idea is that, some people might view psychosis or elements of it as, as a gift, but that also a gift that comes with, some sort of, some danger, right? Some concerns around, ways in which we're not able to function in the way that we want to function. Danny, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I think also this answer, one of the reasons why it's also complex is that what I'm going to say might not apply to everybody, and it might be understood differently by every person that's either going through this or a person that is a family member that is observing this, which is to me one of the things that I understood after going to therapy and meeting other people and becoming a peer was that one of the main topics or emotions that I have in my head is anger. And it's not that I get angry because somebody does something to me, and it's not because I have a diagnosis, I am angry, but rather the way I understood anger has evolved due to therapy. The way I labeled that emotion and that feeling is different. When I was younger, anger was just a reaction. If somebody did something to me, I got angry at them. As I grew up, I hopefully grew up and I matured. Anger now to me is a signal of what is going on around my environment. So if I get angry easily, that is uncommon. I am usually a calm person. I try to solve my problems with words and with thinking about it and stuff like that. But if that is no longer working and I'm frustrated and I'm going towards anger, I don't think that something is immediately wrong, but I make note of that, and I want to think of it further. And I think sometimes even leaving that anger emotion and putting a bookmark into it, putting a pin into it, and coming back the next day when I have some space between whatever happened and the future is helpful to me. And that's a tool that I use. And I think that is a little bit I wouldn't label it a dangerous gift, but more of there was a purity when I went through my lived experience. It was almost like I was finding my true self, and I'm connecting that unabashedly person that was talking to people about magnets, about being a good person, about being spiritual, about finding purpose in my life, to who I am now, which is a person that that's 7 years away from me now. So now that doesn't make as much a connection with who I am now, but I still want to respect and have that emotion still within me, because that's who I was. And I think that is still the true me, but it's not the true me now. And as in the future, I still want to hold those truths that I discovered and those emotions that I felt and I want to give them as much credit as, you know, making me who I am now, and in the future when I become even more what I feel a better person, or maybe it's just luck. I want to share that with the people that ask me those kinds of questions of like, is it okay to get angry? Yes, but I think it's more important that when that you're able to talk about it, that you're able to share that, like, this frustrates me, this makes me uncomfortable, this doesn't make me feel safe. All those kinds of conversations are important to be able to share the space and to be able to tackle it together as a community, because I think the more alone you feel in those emotions, the harder it is to share those emotions. So I hope that answers some of those questions.
Thank you, Danny. I really appreciate that. All right, so we'll wrap up on resources. I think the link for Strong 365 was thrown in the chat as well. We do have a resources page, which has many, many more resources than we could fit here, including a caregiver guide that we developed, a tip sheet for young people who are looking to craft their own wellness toolkit for themselves. We have our social media channels with, you know, individuals and family members, and you know, certainly a thriving community of caregivers in this space as well. Advocacy groups and ways to get involved. We talked about psychosisscreening.org. On Track New York's Learn and Train page has a wealth of information as well as videos you can watch. I'm a big fan of the course, if you haven't seen it, Caring for People with Psychosis and Schizophrenia on Future Learn is very well done. A video that we recently discovered. I know these links might not work, but maybe we can try to find a way to get you these links for Understanding Psychosis by the British Psychological Society. Was very well done. And the YouTube channel, and there are quite a few. So we did just sort of pick one as an example. Living Well with Schizophrenia covers so many topics related to psychosis and a wide range of topics that are, you know, a lot more about just sort of what it's like from a personal perspective for this individual. So with that, thank you so much. And we invite your questions, and we'll review the chat and see what we missed as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You brought up so many important things to think about. I really agree with Kathy's post that even though the series is considered CSC basics, the content that you're sharing is so important and reaches some of the aspects of the field that we still struggle with as a group. So I really appreciate you sharing your experience, your story. I want to encourage folks to ask questions. You can either unmute yourself and ask, or you can write it in the chat.
And while we're waiting for any questions, yeah, thank you, Kathy, about that, the idea, still hearing the phrase psychotic break. It's a word, you know, we're involved in health promotion and communications, as you know, and we've gotten to work together in that space a bit. It's a term that we typically choose not to use. And I think for that very reason, you know, it's, you know, we're all human and language is really powerful. And so the idea of having a break feels like, well, I must have broken, you know, and I don't know that that's fundamentally very helpful for individuals. What can parents do to reduce stigma? Thank you, Ken. It's great to see you here. Yeah, of course, like immediately I just go to all the things that like we did wrong, or that, you know, we could have done better, I should say. And I, not as a parent, but as a sister, and clearly as a part of a family, you know, to trying to support my brother. And I think that a lot of what we shared here today in terms of conceptualizations and communicating. You know, there are a lot of things that I feel like my brother and I just sort of were missing each other for years on how to communicate about this. And part of that was me really thinking that I could sort of just, you know, kind of enlighten him, which was really not a good strategy at all. Like sending books and articles, just not gonna work. And so what I needed to do was listen and really, you know, work from a space of, you know, where he was and what he wanted out of his life. So that was one very basic thing, and it, you know, really had nothing to do with like how smart about psychosis can you get. It was really about, you know, just being human with someone and being there and being present. And then, yeah, in terms of reducing stigma, you know, I do think behind the scenes, it is really important to get as much education and support for yourself as you can. For me, I did find that the NAMI family groups to be very, very helpful in building community, in helping with the sense of isolation. 20 years ago, no one seemed to have a family member who had schizophrenia, and I felt that I couldn't talk about it, and there was some amount of shame around it. But showing up at those groups showed me that that was wrong, and over time, you know, I was able to find a lot more courage in just throwing it out there, you know, at a cocktail party. And sure enough, you know, people would come find me and say, "Oh, you know, my nephew, oh, my, you know, my brother, my son, my daughter." And so I think it's important to surround yourself, you know, with as many folks as you can who can, you know, relate on some level, and remind you that, you know, this is part of the continuum of human experience, despite how difficult it can be. Danny, thoughts on parents? I know your parents have been a really big part of your journey. You might have
Yeah,
some great thoughts.
I think there's a little a wrinkle from my experience was that I come from a divorced family. My mom divorced my dad when I was very young, and it wasn't really traumatic, but it definitely made me grow up a little bit faster. So when it happened to me, my mom was a huge support, and she kind of like, I can't ever give her another test on how much she loves me. Like I can't ever question that love that she has for me. But the one thing that she did do that I think went above and beyond was that she brought my father from where he was and talked about me, and you know, I guess both of them supported me in their own way. For her, it was more about, she's a very social person, so she kind of told everybody my story and like had to get as many support as possible. And to be honest, it was a little bit annoying, but it was annoying as a son. It wasn't really annoying as a person. But I thank her for that. I don't think that would have. I think I would have been more harmed if I didn't have that. A person just looking for every single family member, every contact that she knew, telling about like, you know, what I was going through, that like, you know, I was in a dark place, and you know, she believed in me 100%. And then for my dad, it was almost the opposite. Was he was completely open to me. He never like combated me in anything I was saying, and he was almost like the biggest listener I've ever known. And I think I try to emulate that in my peer work. Is that a way to be a part of the conversation without any judgment, and to open the space as wide as possible, and with the fact that my opinion is my opinion, but it's your life. The person that's in front of me, that's their life. They have the charge of what goes on with them. They have, you know, whether it's responsibility, whether it's that they finally share that something went on, whether it's working on trauma, whether it's it's connecting with another person that has gone through a similar experience. So that way you don't have the sense of like, I know what's best for you because I don't know what you're going through. So those are the two kind of ways I got the support from my parents, is that I try to emulate that. And of course I also had a sister. And for me, I think the best thing was that I saw how it affected her, and to be honest, that was a way for me to get a sense that I wanted to get better, or whatever better means. Like I wanted to like overcome whatever struggle I was going through, because I think it would have hurt more if I was my sister, if I was the person outside looking in. because I wouldn't have known what I went through. And I think that's hard to describe as a person with lived experience, that families, that's a huge barrier to get through. And I think the best way is to tackle it as authentically as possible. So like if you're the parent that, tries to get all the resources, that's who you are. If you're the parent that invites them to go grocery shopping, invite them to go grocery shopping, but don't ever give up. I think that's the main thing. Because I think that's the proof. That's the proof that you care, is that you always try. And if that doesn't work, you go to the next thing. And, sometimes you can hurt somebody. You might say a callous word, or you might take advantage, not take advantage, but say something that you didn't intend it that way. But that is a learning experience. And I think I am more happy that more people ask me questions than silence. I think that's the worst of the two.
Chantel, I'm sorry. It sounds to me like you're talking about pinnacles of motivational interviewing when you were talking about listening as opposed to just talking. Yeah. And I notice one thing we do here with Quiet Minds, which is the first episode of psychosis, is we have psychoeducation for the families that can offer a lot of those support to help break the stigma. And family, it can be anybody that they deem family. It doesn't have to be the traditional mother, father. It could be a sister, it could be a cousin, it could be a friend, it could be someone that and to help break that fear, and the stigma. Especially now when the media likes to throw everything on right up in front of you. So-and-so did this and they were being diagnosed. But if you would notice, when they dive into that, what is the one overall pattern? People either missed the signs, or they ignored the signs, or in some cases, there may have been a degree of apathy. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And in addition, I think we still have extreme access issues, for in many parts of the country and in many cultures. Still, it's very, I think there's still so many barriers to care. And knowing the signs is one universal thing that we can do to begin to help with that. We also need, policy levers. We need, we need funding. We need all kinds of things. So I agree with you. It's all of those things. And I love that family psychoeducation and family groups are part of coordinated specialty care. I think that would have been incredible for our family. And great point about when we say family, we mean chosen family. And so that can mean a lot of different things. Yeah, it's great.
Thank you so much. So we are a little over time. That was a really nice segue. Family psychoeducation and support is our next monthly topic. So we have Susan Gingrich and some fabulous lived experience presenters that are going to be presenting next month as well. And just want to, again, kind of round of applause for Chantel and Danny for sharing all of your wisdom with us today. It's been so valuable. And if we have time for even like maybe one more 30-second response to a question, there was one thing that you hope people that are brand new to working in coordinated specialty care would know about psychosis, what might that one thing be? Maybe it's just a word, maybe it's a phrase.
I have to say hope. Yeah.
I think community. I think community. Just, if you ever find that place where you belong, that is, I think, a strong start. If any smiles, any anything that you're in it together as a person, and you're not alone. And I wish never anybody would ever go through what I went through, but I am here for them. I'm here to support them, because that's what people did for me.
Hope and community, that's a wonderful way. Thank you so much. Huge round of applause. Really appreciate your participation in this and sharing, these words with people in this webinar today and in the future in our program that we're putting together. So look forward to hopefully seeing all of you next month. We'll be sending out announcements about that, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, everybody.
Are these slides going to be available for us to download?
Yep, I included a link and we'll be emailing it after the webinar. There's a link where all of the slides and all of the recordings are kept. So we can share that. In fact, I'll see if I can put that in the link one more time before we close things out. Here's the website.
Thanks, everybody. It was great conversation. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Kathy, thanks everyone.